Welcome to Best Movies Never Made, the podcast where we explore interesting and infamous movies that never made it to or through production. And we are coming to you live from the Chattanooga Film Festival. I am your co-host, Josh Miller, and with me, as always, is Mr. Stephen Scarlata.
How you doing today, Josh?
Oh, I am doing very good. Live podcast, Chattanooga Film Festival. We are going to be talking about George Romero's Almost Was adaptation of the video game Resident Evil. And we are joined by three excellent guests. Returning to the podcast, we have champions Mike Mendez and Brian Collins. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Mike is a filmmaker who's made such films as Big Ass Spider, The Convent, and Tales of Halloween. We highly recommend listening to his two-part interview, really all about his whole career, but also ostensibly about his Almost Was version of Sleepy Hollow. Brian, I'm now realizing, was one of our very first guests. He was on an episode talking about John Sayles' script for an aborted attempt to do Jurassic Park 4. Brian is a critic and creator of the website Horror Movie A Day and its subsequent book. He also has another book called Colin's Crypt. Is that right, Brian?
That is correct. Thank you.
And then I think very relevant, joining us is the founder. Is that the correct way you would say it, Mr. Chris
That
Dortch?
is just fine.
Founder of the Chattanooga
hard and fast
Festival
requirements.
And maybe just kicking things off, since this is live from the Chattanooga Film Festival, and we will be re-airing this as one of our proper episodes. People can check out Mike and Brian on previous episodes to get more details on them. But why don't you give us a little background on the Chattanooga Film Festival, how it started and all that?
I'm actually
stuff.
really glad you asked that, because I kind of wanted to geek out on Mike just a little bit, because this festival began as a pop-up movie theater. I grew up in Chattanooga and moved to Nashville for about 10 years and took a job with the Art House Theater up there, the Belcourt, and really grew to love film programming. And when I moved back to Chattanooga after leaving Nashville, there was a lot happening in the way of the arts. There was fuck all happening. I can curse. In the way of film, and especially nothing happening in the world of genre film. So we originally started as a pop-up movie theater with a double feature of Repo Man and Return of the Living Dead on a snowy night. And even though Chattanooga never gets snow and people freak the fuck out if it happens, people packed the house, and it gave us the confidence to keep coming. And we kept doing pop-up screenings. And one of those very first screenings we did, Mike, was Big Ass Spider, which was we created a giant spider that would attack the crowd, William Castle style, at certain points. And I have to also say, Brian, Horror Movie A Day, and just your general vibe and kindness toward genre films, especially genre franchises, really informed me as a person, but also very much the voice of this film festival and kind of the inclusiveness and the warmth for every film that we have. So it's like a weird honor for me to be on this episode with you guys. When they told me you were the guest, I shit just a little. So
thank you. I said very sad that I've never been there personally. I've heard nothing.
Hey,
but
there's still time. Maybe
there
next
is still
year.
time. Yeah. So there's new stuff coming. So anyway, but yeah.
I was confused. I'm actually in Chattanooga right now, and I'm just really baffled.
Come to the studio. We have beers. So
beers. Here I am drinking
down in a nice coffee.
Like
yeah, what the hell? This is bullshit.
But your festival has an amazing reputation for being one of the most fun and exciting and just great for movie audiences to enjoy movies together. So always wanted to go. Always has a great reputation. So hopefully I'll get to
the invite is open for every one of you on this panel anytime, please.
All right, sweet. All right.
Yeah, I will say, I guess for listeners not familiar with Chattanooga, I feel like, one of the many bummers of COVID and why it's nice to see that it did not kill the festival. But prior to COVID, I felt like I kept hearing more and more of people, you see people at Fantastic Fest, Beyond Fest, a lot of these festivals, and people are just like, Chattanooga's the next one. In particular, our buddies, Josh Ethier and Joe Bagos, who are also on the podcast doing for Commando 2, great episode. But they were like, oh man, we had 100 people at our Airbnb and we got kicked out and all this stuff.
It should also be pointed out that Dave Lawson of Rustic Films, who works with Benson and Moorhead, somehow brought just an absurd amount of fake shit in his suitcase with him. And when they got kicked out of that Airbnb, I wasn't supposed to know this, but he planted it all throughout that house. And I got a very interesting email several days later.
Did the Fest pay for that Airbnb? Was that?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, so you had to deal with
the Fest definitely paid for that Airbnb in more ways than one. So yeah,
I'm very confused. He literally had like fake shit, like little plastic.
He had baggies and baggies of like fake,
like Spencer's
dog
gift
shit
style.
And shit. I don't know what he intended to do.
Is that what he carries with him when he goes to festivals?
Yeah, he's like, hey, just in case we ever have a big party at our Airbnb, I got a case of shit. I want to stick it to those snobs.
It's gonna be awesome.
Really gonna get to.
Yeah, he's still trapped in like a early '80s teen comedy.
If I have a friend that is like Styles in Teen Wolf, it is Dave Lawson for sure. If that guy's somewhere surfing on the top of a van, not surprised whatsoever.
Those lousy snobs. All right, so that is the context I think we need. Let's get a little context on Resident Evil here. I think we've got a wide spectrum of familiarity with the games, starting on my end, which is funny now that I seem to make most of my money adapting video games into movies. But basically, once I hit high school, I became what I would call a very light gamer. I've never played any of the Resident Evil games. Really, all I know about it was, I'm guessing it must have been Resident Evil 2, because that came out in 1988. Is one of my friends in college, my roommate had a PlayStation, so this other friend would always just come over. He was like our Kramer, and he would always incessantly play Resident Evil 2. And I do remember looking over at it and being like, oh, this game seems cool. It seems like it's actually kind of scary. And then I think, Steve, you've played the game a little?
I played the first one. What happened was I was a big gamer growing up. I had all the systems, Atari, Coleco, and Genesis, and then I held off of
systems.
I held off there, Steve. Yeah, I held off of the PlayStation, and my roommates got it. Then I got it, and then my friend worked at the video store, our roommate, and brought it home. Someone sold it to them, and I started playing it, and it was mind blowing. It was like the first time. The graphics at the time were amazing. You could walk around this house. It was a mind-blowing game. I played the second one and I played the fourth one. The fourth one actually kind of scared me. There's a scene in the first one with glass that scared the shit out of me too. And it was kind of I haven't played them since they came out, so I just have vague remembrance. But the first game was really mind-blowing when it came out. It was pretty amazing and so on.
And Mike and Brian, I know you guys played the games. You don't really consider yourselves like experts or super fans necessarily, right?
No, I had the first game on PlayStation. It was exciting at the time because this was a time when there was like, oh my God, they haven't made zombie shit since the 70s, which obviously how dated of a statement is that?
Yeah.
Because now there's zombie shit everywhere. So it was just super excited that there was a Romero-like game, and it was scary, it was atmospheric, and it was creepy, and it was good. And then I think it became a little more interesting, all the behind the scenes of the movie being made, because Romero was attached, and then Paul W. Sanderson, and so I was kind of always keeping an eye on that, but I kind of lost track of the game. I hear the VR one is great, which is the most
hear it is as well.
Yeah.
Brian. Oh, he's showing us his. Look at that!
Yeah,
OG
my old
PlayStation.
Beautiful.
Oh, nice.
I literally I bought a PlayStation 1 to play Resident Evil because it sounded so good. I was like you, I was not really gaming much at the time when it came out, but I was reading Fangoria, and Fangoria had like a review or a write-up or something of it, and I'm like, this like sounds like the greatest thing ever. What is this? And I'm like, is it available on Sega Genesis? Because that was like the last system I had at the point. And I'm like, all right, I guess I have to look into a PlayStation. And and then I played most of the other. I have not played the two newer ones. I'm not good at first person, so I haven't really dived. I did the demos that they put out for those, and I'm like, yep, I still suck at first person. But I've played pretty much all the others, either all the way through or a good chunk of the way through.
I sucked at the first one. I barely.
Oh, the first one, the controlled camera made it so difficult on you not to suck.
Yeah.
I finally beat the first one, and I just show this. I've had this since 1996. I just beat it last year or the year before. Not on this, on the remake version, because I got into a point on the original where like I had saved and I didn't have any more saves, and I'd saved like when I was almost dead, like right before the tyrant fight at the end, and like I had no health or whatever, so like I had no herbs.
Yeah,
no.
Maybe like a blue herb, which would help
have
me.
a fucking typewriter ribbon
Yeah.
to even save in the
So
first
I
place.
could never. I would just constantly just try over and over again just to like escape that battle without getting hit. Like the one time I could get hit before I'd die, and I just never could. I'm like, I have to play this whole game over again because I didn't have enough save. I'm like, and I just never did it. But when the remake came out, I'm like, I'm gonna finally finish this goddamn game. And I tell you, it was an exciting day to see that tyrant go down finally. I was just, yeah.
And then Chris, I think you are filling in as our resident Evil expert, as it were.
I don't know how much of an expert I am, but I can say that both the films and the movies, I've followed along with it. In fact, like my very first paycheck from Blockbuster Video, one of the first jobs I had, I bought my PlayStation copy of Resident Evil and a Butthole Surfers album, and I was like, "Well, this has been good to be employed." You know, so
what a
I've
weekend.
really kind of followed the series, and I have played the 2 new games, and they're absolutely terrifying and really great. And hearing the same things about that VR experience, I think it's a world that I still very much love, and I'm glad that it's still as active a fandom as it is.
Yeah, and before Steve kind of kicks things off here for us with some background, I did just think it's interesting, especially for any younger viewers, because now it's like zombies are just, it's a thing. It's like vampires, werewolves, whatever. But as Mike, I think, was the one alluding to, was just like, I was like, wow, as a thing with zombies, with this being the late 90s, and that did feel like a novelty. And I just kind of looked up just to make sure I had the dates right. And it is kind of interesting to think that, like, really, other than when George Romero gave up trying to make one of the other movies he really cared about and would make another Night of the Living Dead franchise movie, there weren't a ton of zombie movies other than Return to the Living Dead, which was, in fact, kind of a weird spinoff of the Romero franchise. Up until the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movie, which was 2002, the same year as 28 Days Later. 2003 is when the first issues of the Walking Dead comic came out. Then both Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead came out in 2004. And it's kind of like, since then, there was no turning back. Now it's just zombies all over the place.
We're like 4 Walking Dead spinoffs deep at this point, for sure.
Yeah, but it is weird how long it took to like really click in that anyone could make a zombie movie, not just Romero.
There was a genuine like 25-year gap, of just nothing. And I remember writing a script in the late 90s and putting in zombies because I thought that was so cool to do a Romero homage. How novel, and now it's like, oh geez, who cares, so yeah.
Yeah, I did a quick count. I was curious too, because like Night of the Living Dead comes out in 1968. And before Night of the Living Dead, there was like an average of maybe like 2 zombie movies coming out per year,
At some point, you have that Trimark Return of the Living Dead 3 also that had Clark in it. And I'm not sure what the year on that was, but that had, like, when that came out, that was the first zombie thing I'd seen come through in a while at that point.
Yeah, especially theatrically.
Was that like 1990?
93?
93.
Early 90s, yeah.
But I did a quick count. So Night of the Living Dead, 1968, and then in 1972, because of Night of the Living Dead, there was like 9 zombie movies released. In 73, there was 9 zombie movies. 74, 6 zombie movies. 75, 2. 76, 1. And then in 1978, Dawn of the Dead comes out. And then the next year, Fulci's Zombie and another one.
Yeah.
Then 1980, 12 zombie movies. 81, 9 zombie movies. And then 82, 7. 83, 4. 84, 6. And then 1985, 4 zombie movies: Warning Sign, Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead. And then 87, 8, 89, 20. 1990, 6, 91, 6. And then as we get into the 90s, we average like 5. 90 to 93 is like 5, 6, and then 94 to 99 is like 2, 3 a year. A lot of them were like indie movies. You had to really.
I was gonna say, I feel like there's very few iconic movies in there, and also if we're counting Reanimator, that also sort of more of a Venn diagram of animated corpses versus.
I think half of those ones from 1989 were like unlicensed zombie sequels, like Killing Birds and all those things.
And then you've got stuff like Cemetery Man in there that like I'm not quite sure where that falls.
And then I'll get to it probably in a bit, but I used to love, like, towards the end of the 90s, Asia started having like these really cool like zombie movies coming out, like Biozombie and Junk and Stacy.
Is that the one at the mall?
Yeah.
Biozombie, the one at the mall? Yeah, I think that might have been the first Japanese horror movie I ever watched, actually.
Yeah, and then Wild Zero. There was like, I think that was
Wild Zero's great.
Yeah, and I think that's all because of Resident Evil, but we'll get to that.
Those are like propers, because I'm trying to remember Cemetery Man, because in Cemetery Man, if they bite you, do you become a zombie?
So Cemetery Man is based on the Dylan Dog comic series that in the world of the comics, it's a little different. In the book, or in the movie rather, he's the caretaker of a cemetery where I think it's after like 7 days, things just wake up. And rather than lose his job or let the higher ups know, he just sort of fucking whacks them again, puts them back in the ground. And that's just, he accepts that as his day to day. And it gets, increasingly, more surreal as it goes along. And there's some definite necrophilia and a very cuddly disembodied head at one point. So yeah, it's
very dreamboaty Rupert Everett in that movie.
Oh my God. Yeah. This is pre my best friend's wedding, Rupert. Yeah.
Too funny. I guess should we start with like where Romero is around this time
just kind of give us some context, Steve, because it is, for those who don't know, I'd say Romero had a very good career in the sense that he made a lot of well-known horror movies that genre fans love. And obviously Night of the Living Dead, I think, has transcended even being a genre movie and is now just considered like a classic of cinema. But he also had a very, I think, kind of frustrating career on his end because he didn't want to keep making zombie movies, but usually whenever he'd make anything else like Night Riders, which is a fucking crazy great movie if people haven't seen it, it would not make any money and critics wouldn't like it. So then he would just have to make some more zombie movies, and that was kind of, we wrote a whole thing for Fangoria about his like decade-long attempt to do Stephen King's The Stand. He was supposed to do Stephen King's Pet Sematary. He was supposed to do a lot of different Stephen King things that didn't happen. And it always felt like he just had to keep doing zombie movies. And so I'm sure he was probably...
got the dark half in there at least a little bit. Yes. I have some major love for that film.
So it makes sense in kind of a boring way that he's the guy who would have done Resident Evil, but it also,
Well, I mean, I remember I was actually friendly with him when all this was happening and stuff. So it was actually kind of a huge opportunity for him because his career wasn't quite, it wasn't, the world wasn't setting the world on fire or anything with the stuff he was doing, even though it was cool, like the dark half and stuff, but he hadn't had a hit in a long time. And I remember he got hired to do a Resident Evil commercial in Japan. And I want to say Screaming Mad George did the effects for it.
And Steve, I think you posted that on our Twitter account.
Is it the Resident Evil 2 commercial? Yeah. Totally. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so that was kind of where I believe, from what I recall, this is going off memory and it's going off a long time, that's kind of where the Resident Evil thing and him began, and Constantine Films approached him, and for him, this was the return to big studio filmmaking, and so it was, I know he was very excited about it, and I think this turned him, and soured him to all other, certainly Fast Zombies and all the zombie stuff that came afterwards. He kind of shit on it, even in the movies. And I think this was kind of the experience that really kind of began that.
Yeah. Steve, what kind of dates you got for us here?
Oh yeah, I'll start off. I'll just say he had this insane solid run of like Night of the Living Dead, Martin, Dawn of the Dead, Creepshow, and Day of the Dead. And then all of a sudden he does the dark half and Orion goes bankrupt and it gets shelved. But even before that, let me say Monkey Shines in 1988. I didn't realize how bad that did. It came in 12th place when it was released. It didn't even make 2 million. And Cocktail was #1 at the time. And dude, Caddyshack 2 beat it in its second week of release.
He should have made it about a killer ghost.
Had a Kenny Loggins theme song, George.
You can't go wrong with the Kenny, man. Kenny brings the audience with him.
Look out for Jackie Mason. He's a
oh God.
I saw Caddyshack.
This way, go.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I saw that opening night Caddyshack too. And dude, the theater was going insanely. I was laughing so hard too. I thought it was the funniest movie I ever saw. Yeah, I must have been like, I wasn't.
Oh, that is my earliest memory. Because when you're a kid, you kind of basically like everything. Is just that was one of my earliest.
Still basically.
That was one of my earliest memories with like a sequel where I was like, I feel like this wasn't as good as the other Caddyshack, even as a child.
The magic wasn't quite there.
I don't remember liking it, but it's amazing how much bullshit of it is still in my head. How sometimes for no reason I will go, "This is Esther House." Oh,
that Dan Aykroyd character.
Such a weird character.
Oh my God!
Somewhere
you're Alphonse Noon.
And you're Alphonse Noon. The term Fonza Noon, who I believe is someone who farts in a bathtub and smells the bubbles. Fonza Noon. I will take to my grave. I don't know why. So,
dude, there's
the power of
great
cinema.
theme song.
Dude, the scene when a dude goes down the water slide and there's no water, I'm telling you, dude, the theater was going bananas. It was the funniest thing. And you watch it again, you're like, oh my God, how did I think this was funny, this movie? But yeah, anyway, that's 1988, Monkey Shines. And then Two Evil Eyes and The Dark Half gets released in 93, and Dark Half was shelved, and it might have just come out at the wrong time. But when that shit comes out again, it debuts in 6th place, and it only made 3 million opening weekend. And Indecent Proposal was number 1 at the time, and that was already out for 3 weeks. Also, what's crazy is number 2 was that the OMTV Raps movie with Ed Lover.
Who's the man, right?
Yeah, fucking House of Pain fucking beats them at number 2.
That movie even existed. Wow,
I had that soundtrack on cassette.
Yeah, everyone was in that movie, right? Every rapper. Dennis Leary's hilarious.
Yeah, it was literally like, yo, MTV Raps, the motion picture. You're so right.
Oh yeah, Ted Demme, I think, directed it, right?
Ted Demme did direct it.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that beat The Dark Half. But like I said, I think it just came out at the wrong time, and people, if it would have came out originally, I think a few years earlier, I think it would have done much better. And so that brings us up to where Romero is at the time, and
I want to say, wasn't Bruiser in there, or like right? Because that was
Bruiser is
kind of into
2000.
Yeah, I thought, is it 2000
like
on
Bruiser
the nose?
was what he
2000
did after getting dropped from.
Right.
Did Bruiser go theatrical at all? Because I'd only ever discovered that.
Really, no. I think I remember renting it at Blockbuster. Or something.
Yeah, that's my.
Yeah,
Bruiser. I gotta say, as someone who grew up in a suburb in Minnesota, there's all these whether or not it had a theatrical release also usually meant it was just in LA and New York, so that was meaningless to me. Unless it was playing at the mall, it did not go theatrical.
The good news for George, and this is jumping ahead, is that Land of the Dead kind of filled the slot that Resident Evil was going to fill in his life, the big studio kind of comeback. So I'm happy that George got that opportunity to do that. So that was great.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because
when you look at Hopper and John Leguizamo chewing scenery in it, no less. Yeah, that's
Zombie with the machine gun.
Dude, if you look close, they both have knives and forks in their hands because they're fucking definitely chewing up. They're amazing in that movie, man.
They really are.
Yeah, but 94 is when he gets on board The Mummy. That doesn't last. I mean, I'm not going to go through every unmade Romero movie from the 90s.
That could be its own podcast.
It's insane.
I will say people should listen to our, we talk about his version of The Mummy with Mick Garris as a previous episode. People want to know more.
Yeah, and it sucks because he left The Mummy to do another project which fell apart, and that's kind of that's according to Mick Garris in Cine Fantastique. But okay, 1996, we're gonna move there, and that's when Resident Evil's released in America. In Japan, it comes out as Biohazard, but it can't get released as Biohazard because of that New York hardcore band Biohazard. You guys Biohazard fans?
No. Okay.
They had the song.
Or Chris is.
I'm not a fan. Yeah, no. I'm aware of the band. I actually dated a girl that had a really terrifying backstage experience with Biohazard. So
really?
Yeah, they're on a very creepy list for me.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of got ruined. I mean, I used to like them because they were like tough guy New York band, and they always said the name of their band and where they were from. They had that song 5 Blocks to the Subway about getting to the subway without getting beat up. And then when you make it to the subway, you got to keep your back to the wall. You get thrown onto the tracks. Their shit was hard. And then he started dating Tara Patrick, one of the dudes, and it ruined her. Anyway, All right, Biohazard.
Enough of Biohazard.
Enough of Biohazard. All right, then March 1996, Resident Evil comes out, and released in America as a game, and becomes this big hit. And then we're going to jump to 1997, and January 1997 officially gets announced that Constantine Film acquires the rights to Resident Evil. And they did the Neverending Story, the Sean Connery movie, Name of the Rose. And
good movie.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought you were saying that Neverending Story was a Sean Connery movie.
Yeah, the Sean Connery.
Yeah,
He could have played Falcor.
Next week's episode.
I'm a luck dragon.
Fired him from that, and that was
Mailed
when
it
he
to
made
the
the movie
Marx Brothers.
Dragonheart. True story. I was kidding.
With
I am the last one.
Trade.
And they have attached as the writer Alan B. McElroy. He wrote Halloween 4, Rapid Fire, which is a cool
Rapid
Brandon
Fire.
Lee.
The Brandon Lee Rapid Fire.
Yeah.
And then he created a Wrong Turn.
Yes, and he did
Okay.
the first Left Behind movie, and he did Spawn. I
He
think
did
that's
the first Left Behind movie.
Yeah, he wrote that.
Ben
Wow.
Spawn.
Yeah,
the
Little heaven and hell. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
The man likes balance.
Yeah. It was like how Tom Cruise did Top Gun, and then he did Born on the 4th of July.
There you go.
Balance it out.
The American dichotomy. Thanks, Tom.
The budget was going to be 30 million, and they were going to suspect to shoot in 1997. And at the same time, Constantine was working on the Fantastic Four movie that Chris Columbus was going to direct, a Silver Surfer movie.
Ended up being the Josh Trank one that he as well. I can't remember.
They were on board for all the Fantastic Fours.
Yeah.
I think they were even part of the Corman one.
Wow. Okay.
Wait,
Yeah,
Steve, I was going to ask, we don't have the McElroy script, right?
No.
Okay,
I
yeah,
can't-
what-
I couldn't track that one down, unfortunately.
One of our Instagram followers sent me some photos of the first 5 pages of that script because it's at the Romero archive
yes,
in Pennsylvania, but it doesn't seem like there's a PDF floating around. If anyone has one, though, hit us up. We'd like to read it.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. And Constantine was also back in 95. They had Paul Anderson right after he made Mortal Kombat attached to The Stars My Destination, which didn't happen. And they were ready to give him 40 million to do that back in 95. So that's a little, so they already had a connection with him, not to jump ahead. And then May 97, Romero announced Bruiser. May 97, he handed in his first draft, Alan McElroy of Resident Evil. Also that same time, October, and then around late September, early October 1997 is when George Romero starts shooting the Resident Evil commercial for Japan that was just recently discussed. And so Capcom hired him, and it was like after 5 years absence, George Romero came in to shoot the commercial, and he basically wanted to produce it like a movie instead of a commercial shoot. So she shot it like in downtown LA at a abandoned jail. And as Mike said, the awesome Screaming Mad George, co-director of the Guyver, was the special effects artist. And because I don't believe Savini wasn't available, so he used Screaming Mad George. And so story goes is that Capcom was impressed with his work, and that's when they started leaning towards him to direct the movie. There was a Fangoria article written on set of that commercial shoot, and he kind of said something like he already knew they were going to make a movie, and he was hoping that the commercial would impress them too, to see how he would shoot this, to keep him in mind. And so eventually, Capcom comes around and they're like, yeah, you can direct the movie and write and direct. And he had his assistant set up a video camera and shot video of his assistant playing Resident Evil. And then 6 weeks later, he handed in the script. In 1998, January, Resident Evil 2 was released. And then October 1988, this is where we can get into Romero's first draft of the script.
was gonna say, if he'd really had the foresight, he should have put that video of his assistant playing the game online. He could have gotten a drop on the whole watching other people play.
That's what I was just thinking. He invented the Let's Play. Good for him.
Yeah.
I also
found
just,
that my
oh shit.
I bought that at a convention like in probably 99, I guess.
Brian is holding up
October
the actual
7th.
Physical script.
So is that the first draft?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only one I've ever seen. I don't know if he ever wrote a second draft. Yeah.
Supposedly, he wrote
that
like
the one that's
6.
dated October 7th?
October 7th, yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is while I was reading the script, all I was thinking of, because he does pinpoint a lot of stuff that's in the game, and I'm like, I cannot picture him playing this. I bet he had his assistant do it, because I just can't picture him going like, the spawn point takes me all the way back to the beginning of the level. I got to do the whole thing.
Typewriter ribbon.
I opened up the instruction manual, and saving is 2 pages. It's just 2 pages to explain how to save in this goddamn game. That's how funky it is.
I'd forgotten
both of those pages.
I'd forgotten that PlayStation 1 games just came in a straight up CD jewel case.
Yeah, well, originally they were these bigger ones that were about DVD, maybe even a little bigger, and they're thicker certainly. But they were taking up too much shelf space, and so they replaced them with the jewel case. But the bigger ones kind of like big box VHS. They're kind of like collector's items. And I did have that one at some point. I don't know why. I probably was like, I want the jewel case. It's smaller. So this is actually my second copy, because I definitely had the bigger one at one point. Oh well.
Yeah, I've only seen those first 5 pages that our listener sent of the McElroy script, which seemed like is not the same as the opening of the script we have. So I have no idea how similar that draft is to the one Romero did. It seems possibly like he just threw it out.
Well, it looks like PSM wrote an article about it in June 1998, and they said, it starts off with a disturbance in Raccoon City, strange animals are mutating campers and park rangers, a SWAT team is sent in and quickly killed, and then the government recruits Weskler from an asylum, and he brings in Valentine and Redfield. And they had a little blurb of memorable scenes, which is members seek their way across a room filled with corpses that might be zombies. A giant spider corners the team when they run out of ammo, with zombies about to burst in. The team members get trapped in a service elevator where they're surrounded by mutated hornets. And there's a Jill Valentine shower scene. And that's all they...
Okay. Well, none of that's in the Romero script, so...
And I guess there's a giant wasp scene also in it.
Huh.
The giant spiders are in the game. Most of that other stuff is not that I remember. Yeah. I don't remember hornets.
I think that was my biggest thing with I'm sure we'll get into it in a moment here, but that was my biggest thing. I was most impressed was that it actually felt like, he's actually doing the game. That's cool.
No, there's very
I was
the only filmmaker that I've seen actually try to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
So
because it is, again, because I didn't play the games really. I just remember when the Paul W.S. Anderson movie came out, even though it did well. I remember my friends who liked the game were kind of just like, he didn't do like anything really from Mila Jovovich's characters completely made up.
The dogs in there, but that's not even
dogs. Yeah, that was it.
The
dogs.
liquor.
The liquor.
Yeah.
My big thing is there's no residents in the Resident Evil. That actually happens in this one, which was actually like, oh wow, okay, I would have reacted much better.
She basically wakes up there, takes a shower, and then they're like, come on. The action is elsewhere.
Yeah, you see the house like at the very end of the movie. Like it turns out like the whole base is like under the house.
Like
so you see them like literally run through like one hallway.
Yeah, I guess we could get to that a little bit later. His thing, because I guess we can maybe talk about his approach, because his approach with her was using Alice as the character versus Jill Valentine. Jill Valentine, he thought, if I make her the lead, people are going to know she's not going to die. But to create this character that's not in the game, as she wakes up, you're supposed to be the player waking up with her and journeying through this whole thing with her as you're playing her, and you don't know anything, like she doesn't.
I mean, she's still the main character, so I still assume she's not gonna die. I don't know
that.
Then he hooks up
with WS. What does the WS stand for? I always assume it's William Shakespeare. That's what I like to call it. All William Shakespeare Anderson.
I'm actually a fan. I mean, I'm
a fan as well. I
really like Soldier, but for all the wrong reasons. I think it's fucking hilarious. I think Resident Evil's all right. And funny enough, I think his Death Race is okay.
I like that one too. Yeah.
That's all I got for him. Other than that, I'm a
well.
I think what was his first film? Shopping. I think is really fun, where people are like driving cars through stores, Blues Brothers style.
Well, I do always stick up.
I think
for
Event
him.
Horizon's got some great
Horizon.
things.
Red Horizon's cool. I'd always stick with them too, because after the first Sonic the Hedgehog came out, people are like, "Oh, you made the first successful video game movie," and I'm like, "It's not even remotely true." First of all, Detective Pikachu also did well, and that was like the year before. I think if you factor in inflation, the first Tomb Raider movie's still probably
but hold on, and not to blow smoke up your ass here, but when they say successful video game, not only financial successful but watchable, that you can make it from the beginning to the end,
and that the fans of that franchise embrace, love.
I think Sonic is the first one of those.
But I'm just saying, Paul Samus, he made Mortal Kombat, which was a hit, the 90s one.
I don't think it's a good movie. I think Sonic's a better film.
So what I did not know, because I usually don't look at like global box office numbers. Now I do, because I'm always like, how much money is Sonic 2 making? I was unaware of the fact, and pardon our listeners if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I don't know if you guys know. So they made 6 W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies. Each one of those made more money than the previous one. They're like Lord of the Rings movies.
And we got some Russell Mulcahy in the middle there too.
He
doesn't even do them.
The sixth one, whatever one that's called.
Final chapter.
That is like one of the highest grossing video game movies of all time globally. It only made like 20 here, and then it made like almost 400 worldwide. It's interesting,
but they're all pretty terrible. So so they have that in common.
I like them actually. I mean,
really?
I love them.
I don't disagree with Mike either.
I like 5.
I like the first one. The first
Which
one
is the one.
Okay.
I'd only seen like the first one in theaters, and then I never saw any of them. And then Steve, were you part of that? Somebody's that we watched all 6 of them in like 2 days, so they kind of blur together.
Which yourself afterwards?
Which is the one?
They do. I was the only one defending them.
I have
I like most of them. I don't like the last one. I didn't like too much, but 5 I think is like legitimately.
I completely.
That's the one that begins.
There's something special about it for sure.
Which is the one that begins with a zillion clones of Mila?
Afterlife.
That's 4.
4?
I don't remember. The subtitles I'm not good with. 4 is the clones.
So it's like Resident Evil, Apocalypse, Extinction, and now
then it's either Afterlife or Retribution. Those are the ones I get.
It definitely brings up the point of why you should just number sequels. It makes them so much easier to.
Final chapter is easy because it's no 6. Final chapter.
I also took offense to the fact that basically each one was just another rip off of another movie. So like the second one is like the Escape from New York one, then you get the Mad Max one, and it just kind of goes from there. Then it just kind of gets and then more.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He loves his Matrix shit.
I will say, I think they maybe are better if you like binge watch them, because they're really weird. Like clearly they are not. To me now, there's almost like that. Games,
it's like the great love story of Mila and Paul. So it's like he's continuing to cast his wife as his muse and like letting her lead this franchise with him. So I'm charmed by that aspect of it as well.
They're very strange movies.
Eventually, they do work the other game characters in. It's almost like he has a checklist, and then like in part 5, he's like, "All right, who's left? Who haven't we got to yet?" So they kind of throw almost everybody in that one. And they're just like, I mean, the guy that plays Leon is like a dead ringer for the video game, which is really creepy. It's like it's clear.
Then you got
that,
Mike Epps in there just for that little comic relief.
Somebody at Capcom was like, for Christ's sake, will you please put in Jill? Will you please put in this person? Will you please put in Ada Wong? Would you please put in Barry? Barry was good. Barry was Kevin Durant, who's always a fun guy to watch.
In the games, that's something I was going to ask, and maybe we should start getting into the script itself here. So whenever I came across like a character, I would just quickly Google it to see if it had its own like Resident Evil wiki page. Yeah. And I was like, clearly this is kind of following the game because every character is from the game. How many playable characters are there in the games though? Are most of these characters just kind of part of the background and cutscenes?
Well, it just depends, because some of them they've even gone and done these little, there's things like Code Veronica where you get a little more of like Claire Redfield or Jill, these kind of flights of fancy they took off the main series even. So like in the main games, like for example, they just did this remake of Resident Evil 2, and you can start that campaign as either Jill or I think Leon. Yeah. So it's a lot more playable characters than it was when they originally came out, for sure.
But can you play as Knuckles the Echidna? Like
no.
They have blast processing involved.
All All right, so the script we have. Wait, Steve, did you have any more context leading up to the script you wanted to give?
I mean, I guess we can start. I mean, actually, I went a little bit out of. I mean, I can touch on the rest of the stuff afterwards because it's not like
let's do it after.
It's not the craziest. Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, because the script is by Romero and Peter Grunwald, who I discovered Peter Grunwald's dad was the editor-in-chief of Time magazine. But it seems like most of his credits are not writing; they're all producing credits, and he produced Monkey Shines, Bruiser, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead with Romero. So,
thanks, bud.
Yeah. But so this, right, you guys all read it. Seems like it's pretty faithful to the games. I think it's one of those interesting things to like, dial your mind back to what it would have been like, especially for someone like me who had not played the games. If this had come out in 1998 or 99, this would have been mind-blowingly awesome.
I was surprised how much I liked it. I was kind of prepped for it to be kind of cheesy, and don't get me wrong, but especially in the setup scenes when we learn Chris Redfield is part Mohawk Indian and on his spare time scouts eagles. Yes, there's a little bit of cheeseballness to it, but once it gets going, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, it's I don't know what you guys thought of the newest Resident Evil.
I actually liked it, but it's hilarious that's the closest to the fans getting what they wanted, and that actual adaptation was, and it did very poorly.
And I think it.
And by the way, has this post-credit scene where like Ada Wong gets brought in a big reveal. Like we were like, oh shit, it's Ada.
And it has the origin of Wesker's sunglasses, which I thought was pretty funny.
That's funny.
Hold on, I have something for you.
Hang on.
I also enjoyed the movie. Sunglasses. I also enjoyed the new one, but it had the problem though that we've now lived through 20 plus years of all the movies that were influenced by Resident Evil. So it kind of, it was the same problem that the John Carter of Mars movie had when it finally came out. It's just like this John Carter of Mars, people have been ripping it off for 100 years. DNA, so like you see the movie now and it's kind of, you're just like, I feel like I've seen all like fighting in a gladiatorial alien ring, but again, if this had come out before everyone had been ripping off the Resident Evil stuff,
would have been awesome.
Been crazy.
This would have been so much better than the Paul W.S. Anderson, I feel.
I agree too.
Yeah, 100%. This is
but just kind of walking through this, and feel free to interject anything at any point here. I'm just stumbling through my notes. But yeah, so it begins with Dr. John Marcus, who I assume is from the games, little prologue thing of like a bunch of military guys and boardroom bigwigs watching like a live stream of him, clearly from a lab where everything's going wrong, being like, stay away from here, the lab must remain sealed. And obviously that's not going to happen. And then we cut to what Mendez was alluding to, Chris Redfield, who in this is a Mohawk Indian, but I'm guessing not in the games.
I think he's just part Mohawk Indian. That's just the tracker in him.
And
explain it somehow.
Exactly.
And we learned it. So he's feeding trout to eagles that he's named Goliath and Cleopatra. And there's, he notices something mysterious take one of the trout, like while his back is turned, some kind of creature or whatever. But we also learn when he goes back home and gets into bed with Jill Valentine, who's sleeping, that apparently his like routine is that he gets up super early and goes fishing for trout to then feed to the eagles. I just like the extra step that it's not that he goes and feeds the eagles first. No. He has to successfully catch a bunch of
wild caught trout.
I'm like, this guy's gotta.
The eagles can't do that themselves.
But Jill holds a secret too, though.
Yes, which we will get to. But as Mike said, this is all very cheesy, but admittedly, it's the kind of cheesy I like, and especially in like Romero horror movies.
It felt kind of Howard Hawksy, like that little bit of like.
Yeah,
John
their banter, I like this script, I feel is like the dialogue is good for the most part. Like I like their kind of cheesy couple banter.
It was apropos for the time. It was kind of in the same kind of time era as like The Rock or something like that. So like the kind of relationship stuff felt kind of like 90s action movie kind of relationship.
That's true. Yeah. It is kind of like The Rock.
The thing with the opening that I think was weird is that Chris was not part of Stars. and that I think was a weird decision on his part, because the game, I mean, it wouldn't mean anything to people that hadn't played the game, but for the gamers, that would have been like, what the hell's happening? Like right off the bat, he does this huge change where Chris, the hero of the game, who's like Jill's equal, you know, in the Stars unit, is, you know, doesn't even know what Stars is. Like he doesn't even know, he's not even aware where she works.
Yeah, and this,
I thought that was an odd decision.
Yeah,
to kick things off. Usually, it seems smarter to like start with familiarity and get us on board, and then kind of branch out, rather than like, you know, kind of confuse us from the start. And then, you know, but like the last scene in the script, the last, you know, the climax is almost identical to the game, but like the specifics of getting there were very different.
I'm wondering
There's
if
a lot of conveniences, a lot of conveniences in this.
Yeah,
script.
I'm wondering if he just felt like he didn't want, you know, he didn't want to make Aliens or Predator where like everyone is kind of, I mean, the funny thing though is Chris is so like capable and badass that he might as well have been.
Oh yeah. After a while, like there's no difference. Yeah.
He did freely,
but it's almost, I mean, like we were talking, somebody mentioned earlier about, you know, the Mia character and the Paul Anderson ones, that you know, we need like an audience surrogate to keep like, okay, like, you know, she doesn't know anything that's going on. We don't know anything. So it's like almost like Chris has to fill that role a little bit of like the outsider who, you know, the Stars people can occasionally like be like, oh, well, you know, this is what we do, and this is what Stars stands for, you know, whatever the hell. But I don't think you need that for this sort of thing, because it's literally just guys shooting zombies after a while. I think we get the context. But, yeah. And
well, and speaking of context, as we're already talking about, like just imagining that this came out before Resident Evil and 28 Days Later. And again, especially if you weren't somebody who played the game, and I like the way that this is described, because I almost feel like it's Romero being like, yeah, I'm upgrading what zombies are like. Is our kind of first zombie scene, which is all done almost like Sam Raimi Evil Dead from the POV of the zombie. We never see it, but it's a zombie attacking a farmer friend named Rake. He's one of Chris's friends, but it's described as wide shot of Rake and of the frightened animals from 200 yards away. Then the camera moves in slowly at first, then gaining speed, extraordinary speed. He's kind of highlighting like, oh shit, this zombie can run, which again, now barely feels like a novelty. But yeah, in the beginning of the story, the big twist that someone was already alluding to is that we find out that Jill, Chris's new girlfriend, is a member of these like, you know, mercenaries who are being called in.
She has a secret closet.
Yes, she does have a secret closet
of arms.
Yeah, she types numbers into a keypad. A secret panel opens, revealing a closet within a closet.
Chris never wondered why she had a keypad on her closet, I guess.
Yeah, he's not snooping. He's respecting your space, because Chris is our one like
he's focused on the trout.
Chris is our one Raccoon City local here.
Yeah.
Jill is, I think they kind of note, is new, and we find out that this was part of her like cover. The way she says it later when Chris finds out is though her cover was to date him, but I think
it's very weird.
I don't think that's what they meant. I think the cover was just that she's a normal person. But yeah, military dudes are flying in, evacuating people. But actually, before the full squad comes in, Jill has her own little squad who goes into the forest, and they just kind of immediately get attacked. Then we cut away to Wesker, and there's almost so many characters here. I kind of stopped writing them down because I'm just like, are all these characters important? But mostly they're just there to get.
There was Vasquez, Hudson, Drake. I forget the other one.
Yeah, like
the character he definitely created a character in Rodriguez who is basically Vasquez. It's the exact same shit.
I just felt that whole thing, that whole squad.
Oh, the whole shit. But most of them are character names from the game. Like they weren't big parts, but like Forrest and some of the Brad, I think.
Yeah, Richard Aiken, Kenneth Sullivan, Rosie Rodriguez, Forrest Spire. Forrest Spire is listed as a wiry Willem Dafoe type.
In my notes, I just wrote Space Marines for any scene that they're in, because that kind of covers it. So like, she hangs out with the Space Marines. Yeah.
But yeah, Wesker has a relevant relationship with a guy named Barry Burton, where like they keep talking about like, I owe you one. I told you, I haven't paid you back yet, or whatever. That I guess becomes more relevant as we get in deeper. Yeah, Chris, that was already super crazy badass, which I mean, it would have been cool as long as they didn't cast a white guy, which I don't think Romero would have done. He was usually cool about that. as who they cast for Chris, but they definitely lean on the idea that he's just super badass because he's part Mohawk. Because when he's getting evacuated, the troopers are evacuating Raccoon City, and he just immediately kicks one of the soldiers in the balls and then like runs away while they're shooting at him. And I'm like, wow, they really got off to like a first blood beginning here for our quote unquote everyman. But I mean, following the game, then again, it's just funny because they've ripped off the game and the Resident Evil movie so much. So it's a pretty standard format of they get to the Acclaimed mansion or whatever it's called. And there's kind of the phase where they're just exploring this derelict mansion before opening the secret passages to get down to the lab underneath. Extra weird is the idea that Chris, it is revealed, and I was confused at first because I
was very confused by this. This made no sense.
And this is, I was confused by watching the newest movie, which I guess is faithful, but the idea of like kids who grew up in like an orphanage run by the Umbrella Corporation. So Chris knows how to move around the house. So I'm like, oh, he's part of the like orphanage. But then later they reveal it was just that this house has always been here because it was built by a bootlegger a zillion years ago. And the Umbrella Corporation bought it and built a base underneath. So he, as a kid, would break in and play in the abandoned house, but before there was ever a secret lab. Yeah. So it's like he knows where secret passages. I mean, it's kind of a fun idea, I guess, but it's also a little confusing. But it's the idea that
super convenient.
He knows secret passages that the bootlegger built, not Umbrella. So he has like an extra layer of knowledge, even on top of like Wesker and the other.
Yeah. Again, that's kind of like the Rock thing coming back, where it's like Mason's like, oh, I can teach you how to get through all the tunnels and shit. I escaped here, so I know how what door to go through and how to get through that thing and blah blah blah.
A little more of an alien parallel. You're the only one. You gotta go back.
Oh yeah,
and it's weird. And it's weird that they ended up using that idea. They ended up stealing that idea from Romero because that's not part of the game at all. In the Welcome to Raccoon City Resident Evil movie, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that did Strangers 2.
Johannes Roberts.
So thank you. That came into it, and I hadn't read the script since I bought it, which was like 20 something years ago. And as I was rereading it, I was like, oh shit! Like they ended up like using that idea, kind of like because like in that one, Chris and was it Chris and Claire?
Claire.
Yeah, were at the orphanage, and it was like there's like a tunnel that connects the orphanage to the mansion.
She's
or
got
some
her
shit.
Mutant friend.
Yeah, so they're familiar with it because of all. Yeah. So it's like it's like the Jodorowsky's Dune thing. It's just like the ideas will find a way. We'll cherry pick from whatever unmade thing happened, and we'll get it out there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a set piece in this movie that Anderson uses in his movie somewhat
the
too.
Lasers.
Yeah.
The lasers
are not in the game that I remember. Maybe one of the sequels, but I mean, he only had. So this is 98, so they only had the first 2 games. So I don't recall lasers being in either of those.
I remember that was one of the best sequences in the movie. I recall that and the dogs.
It had a certain cube quality to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But so this. I almost would have liked more of it, but I get, you want to get to the underground lab stuff. So, but there's this brief phase where they're in the mansion where it's Wesker and his guys. We revealed that Jill had survived that initial attack on her smaller troop. And so she's somewhere in the house on her own. And Chris is also in the house on his own. And then they all kind of collide and form one big glob that moves through the house and gets, picked off one by one. There's a lot of interesting little set pieces that I don't know that there's a reason to highlight them that again would have been cool at the time and now feel
there are some
bit more
definitely worth highlighting. Zombie sharks appear.
I meant in this above the.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay, sorry. I was like, wait.
Oh no, we can't forget the zombie sharks.
Yes, I mean that was
the vine thing. I thought was very cool. Where like they go into a room and the wallpaper is like like the faded like vining looking thing. And then they like the characters don't even notice, but like the vines actually start coming to life.
Yeah,
and realize it's not the
I
wallpaper.
Got that highlighted.
I mean, that was very.
I loved that.
The shark thing is the first crazy thing, because the rest is more like here's like a little bit that would have been, you know, cool special effects where Chris goes into a lab and sees a guy like typing at the keyboard, and then the man turns his head slowly to look towards the voice. There's nothing left of his face. Raw tissue seeps odd colored fluids. A single eyeball is nested tenuously in the ooze. Something like a mouth recognizable only because of its position opens and groans. Like that would have been awesome. Now, you know, it's like the effects are so good on The Walking Dead, and they've done so many seasons. It's kind of like they've done every gross zombie permutation you can think of. But yeah, then Chris, and this is actually a fun moment when Chris and Jill both find each other and realize the other is alive, is because Chris has fallen into a tank full of 6 zombie sharks, and Jill's like comes into the aquarium and sees them inside and has to like fire, you know, a machine gun at the glass to break it. And this is definitely one of those, like, and we'll let Steve get to this when we're done going through, but I have to assume part of the reason this died was because they would have been way too expensive.
Yeah, 6.
And knowing
not even 1, just let's do 6.
6. I bet that would have been gotten down to 1 zombie shark, down to what if we had no zombie? What if it was just a zombie in a tank of water?
I just like that it had, you know, echoes.
Turns out they can swim after death.
This is at the point where Wesker has revealed that they need to get an antidote, and they're trying to go deeper and deeper to get to the D lab. There's a lot of stuff in there here about like key cards and who can go where. I also think it's funny, just old scripts when they kind of date themselves, is they go out of their way to describe that Wesker has this gizmo like a Game Boy that has like a digital map of the lab on it, as though that's like really high tech.
And that was also resurfaced in the Raccoon City one, because like they go out of their way to explain what a Palm Pilot is, because the movie takes place in 98.
That movie also features a great scene where a guy is in a car playing Snake on his flip phone.
I forgot that. Oh, right.
Full on into the time
bit.
But I'm like, you could have said it in 2020 and people still probably wouldn't know what a Palm Pilot was anymore. Like it didn't need to be period for this detail.
There's kind of a fun thing going on once Chris and Jill are there, because Chris is obviously like, what the fuck, like a super soldier. And Wesker's basically like, we need to fucking kill this guy. He's going to get in the way. And Jill's like, no, I'll, you know, let's not kill him. And Wesker's like, fine, he's your problem. It's kind of a little bit of rom-com going on in here. Like I said, I like the cheeseball dialogue. I wanted to highlight one thing because I plan to steal it word for word for a future script at some point. So I just already want that on the record, that Jill is like, there's no I in team, Chris. And Chris responds, there's no I in dead either. Yeah. Go
There's your poster tagline. Fuck.
We also start hinting at, and this is the part that I feel would have been for people who didn't play the game, the kind of also, aside from Fast Zombies, the big like zombie movie upgrade is when we start hearing like weird monstery, like huge beast like monstery sounds echoing from elsewhere in the house. And as a viewer, I would have just been like, oh shit, that there's something more than just a zombie and zombie dogs. Also, I had no idea the sheer volume of like crazy different creatures this franchise had, but it makes sense because they made a zillion of the games and they have to keep outdoing themselves. But then getting to what Collins was highlighting, booby traps, there's kind of a cool set piece where they realize there's these laser beams shooting out, but they're not laser beams that cut you. It's more like they trigger these acid jets to spit out. So they're all hiding on the ground, but dumb zombies who don't know to avoid the lasers are just like walking through the lasers and triggering them, which means the acid just keeps raining down on everyone.
Last Crusade there. Jehovah is spelled with an I.
But what we're learning today is Sean Connery should have been in this film.
Yes. He should have been in this film as Falcor.
They stole that for entrapment.
You're right. They did. The lasers came right back for entrapment.
Sean Connery is the voice of the But then, so here's the thing that Collins was talking about. They enter an arboretum, or wait, maybe we already passed this. Sorry.
Well, they introduced the Vine wallpaper early, but then then they get to the actual
that was early. That was the kitchen is lined with 50-year-old ivy pattern wallpaper. The printed vines seem to be moving. Chris doesn't notice until the vines begin to wriggle furiously and rip through the wallpaper. Right. So then they find out what these vines were attacked to. They enter an arboretum. which is just full of like big insane plants, including this one big, Audrey 2 style. The vines from that movie, the vine or that
the ruins,
the ruins, not the vines. There's also like a big crazy, again, thinking of the things that would have for sure gotten cut, where they'd be like, do you also need a big man-eating copperhead anaconda snake in this arbertum with the man-eating plant?
That was my favorite thing. It was like, this could have been a set piece all on its own. You have giant plants, but it's like they literally like turn like 5 degrees away from the giant plant, and then there's a giant snake too. And I'm like, yeah.
And all I was thinking of was like what the 1999 CGI would have looked like on that. Kind of like, it's probably best it didn't happen.
No, I mean,
the guy that made the actual Mummy instead we can just look at some of the effects in those movies. And
because this would have been coming out around the same time as Deep Blue Sea, which I always think is so interesting because that has like kind of the best mechanical practical sharks ever, and then just these horrible CG sharks. It's such a weird like a weird crossroads in where technology was. But next we introduce I kept expecting liquors to show up, and they never do. Spoiler alert. Were liquors not from the first 2 Resident Evil games?
They were absolutely in the first 2.
Oh, they were? Okay.
Yeah, there's some major set pieces in the second game.
The Tyrants and the Hunters, I think.
Yeah, this has the Hunters, which turns out to be the things you were hearing.
They're all kind of similar, so they probably felt it was,
because these also, they have climb around on the ceilings, and there's a lot of set pieces of and again, there's 6 of them. Not just one hunter. There's a whole bunch of them. You can't kill them with a headshot like the zombies. You got to shoot their joints, which felt, I don't know if that's what it is in the video game, but
no. I remember that from the game. I just remember they're just bullet sponges. You can shoot them in the head.
you just shit a bunch of bullets into them, and eventually they sort of die.
And then we enter another, cube style set piece where they're in a hallway and the floor begins to grind in and out, left and right, as though it were chewing, and it's eating up, dead bodies and dead hunters and whatever. And then that's when they reach the only survivors in the whole complex, which is Ada Wong, who we'd seen on like a video playback, old video earlier in the movie, and 2 other scientists, and they look all fucked up, and they kind of give our big exposition dump. We've had a lot of actually exposition dumps from Wesker kind of half explaining things, but she explains it further about the T-virus and bioorganic weapons. And
I feel like you get a little bit of that in the Johannes Roberts too, because there's definitely like, the scientist that they've locked up in Raccoon City Police Station, who we see on video is like an activist early, like, we got to get the truth out about Raccoon.
Oh, yeah.
Then they finally get to D-Lab, and that's when we find the Tyrant, who's like the big super creature, even more horrible than the Hunters. We get our big twist in this, that Wesker was lying about getting an antidote. He's just trying to get the twist. He's trying to get the data on the Tyrant so that he can sell it back to Umbrella or the highest bidder. Everyone else is like, what the fuck? And he's basically just like, anyone who wants to get out alive, who gets out of here alive, gets a taste of me selling this. But half our people are like, no way, we got to stop this from getting out.
And he's got the dead man switch. Like there's something in his ear.
He has a dead man switch. And actually, I kind of like this moment where Jill has her, what was meant to be her big hero moment, like spoiler alert, it's like, it was like that moment at the end of Stranger Things season 3 where Hopper nods to Winona Ryder of like, just fucking blow it all up. And Jill and Chris nod to each other, and she pulls the thing out, the detonator on Wesker, assuming that the moment she did that they would just instantly explode, but that sets like a 15-minute timer. And she's like, well, shit, like I just worked up all my
she even says like, I ruined my my moment or whatever.
We still have 15 minutes to get out of here.
Good dialogue in here.
So then, like, most of our good guys are trying to escape. They sort of give like a Paul Reiser and Aliens moment to Wesker and his buddy Barry, the ones that they keep being like, I still owe you one, and blah, blah, blah. They're trapped in there with the Tyrant. But then Wesker managed to even betray his buddy further than he betrayed the rest of the team, because Barry's trying to kill the Tyrant, and he's going to like throw a grenade at it. And Wesker just kills his buddy because he's like, no, I'm still trying to collect the data to get out of here. He almost gets out, like he met like some doors are just about to shut, and he's like, ha, eat shit, you, he's saying to the tyrant, but the tyrant like launches a tentacle through the door and kills him, and then opens.
Very Creepshow 2, the raft style.
Yeah. And then there's we get some infected crows. I feel like Rodriguez martyrs herself twice almost in a row, where she's like, you guys go, I'll hold them off, but then it actually works the first time, and then she does it again, but is infected by a crow at that point. We get this whole freight elevator shaft that you were saying, Collins, is basically right out of the game, where the tyrant is like trying to get them.
Well, the elevator, I mean, I was having trouble visualizing that. There's something about like they're jumping off of pylons or something, and but then they're on chains, and like they pull a chain, and it'll make somebody else go up, and then it'll make somebody else go down. Which I get that, and that would have been cool. But the whole thing with the tyrant, like in the lab, and it's like, you know, there's even a note in the script like, oh, he can't get directly to it because there's like desks and stuff in the way. Like that's the climb. You know, when you're fighting the tyrant, that's like your best chance of escape is like run around to the other side of a desk and shoot him because he has to keep going around the desk, you know, like you just gotta,
yeah.
So it's like there's little things like that where like you could tell that they were really, really trying to like stay faithful to the game's big moments, even if they got there from different.
Is it from the games? Because it's a big important.
That whole elevator shaft thing. I didn't. No, that was not.
Oh,
the game.
Okay.
No.
It's an important part of the tyrant's design in the movie that his heart is on the outside of his body.
I think is in the game.
Okay, and he has a rhinoceros heart.
But you got to have that zone where you shoot, you know?
Yeah. He's already in the rocket launcher.
Yeah,
exactly.
Although I can't skip before we get to the actual climax, when Rosie martyrs herself for the second time and she's being killed by the tyrant, her final great line is "Eat me, you pile of shit." But then Chris gets them out of there, like we said, because he knows the bootlegger secret passages that weren't even part of the umbrella design. They get out of there. There's still the one chopper left with guys that we've cut back to a couple times. Everyone but Chris gets in the chopper. They're flying away. They only have a few seconds before everything's going to get nuked. Jill throws a rocket launcher to Chris, who aims it at the tyrant's rhinoceros heart and explodes it. They've just managed to get out of there. He gets in the chopper as they're flying away. She's like, sorry, Chris, I know it's your home. And Chris is like, I hoped it would be our home. And then Jill says, well, I guess we're going to be moving. And then kaboom. And then I love this detail is we just get all these shots of zombies getting nuked.
Yeah.
But then there's like a few on the very outskirts of town who get like hit with a bunch of shrapnel, but some of them don't get hit in the brain.
Yeah.
So they just kind of shamble away from the destruction. Screen goes to black. The end. So.
Woo! Somehow we mentioned a few lines, but I think we missed the best line in the entire script, where one of the random aliens ripoff guys says, "This is like Night of the Living Dead."
Yes, that was a good one. Yeah.
Oh, George.
For its time, because I remember I went to see House of the Dead at AFM, and it was like the first screening of it. The audience loved it, and when they brought up oh, you were there, yeah,
with Dave Parker.
So. Oh, you were, yeah.
Parker wrote it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I was at that screening. The audience loved it, and when they brought up that Romero line, the audience just exploded with laughter. And I remember being in that theater, like, wow, I'd never heard. That was like the first time I ever,
that screening went so well, I almost thought it was a good movie. So,
and then we had the great idea to bring Uwe Boll out and give him a retirement party at CFF, and the tales I could tell you.
Oh man, wow!
I would like to hear those tales at some point.
I would too. I haven't seen the movie since that screening, and I remembered liking it, and then it came out, and then people were like, "You're crazy."
I remember being kind of charmed by like the fully Sega-esque sequences that were within that movie, but otherwise, no.
I remember liking it and then never having the slightest desire to ever see it again. So that kind of told me something. So,
so it's like another Caddyshack 2 for me.
The only line I just remember, why do you want to be immortal? To live forever. Like, okay.
That's a quality answer.
Yeah. Wait, did anyone play the Dreamcast typing of the Dead?
No.
Yes.
Oh no.
And I have a lot of bad Dreamcast era memories. That system, oh boy.
Because for those who don't remember, and it didn't come with it, you had to order it separate. And for some reason,
it was expensive.
one of my roommates, when I first moved to LA, had the keyboard, like the old fashioned, big, chunky computer keyboard that you could plug into the Dreamcast for certain games that I'm sure most of them were meant to be like educational, but they
Not
someone, I think it was like a proper sold Dreamcast game, made a version of House of the Dead called Typing of the Dead, where instead of the gun,
I remember
it was connected to the keyboard.
It's like the Mavis Beacon typing game where
and
if you fuck up, it
would
bug hits
appear
your
in front of the
windshield,
zombies,
basically.
and you had to finish the sentence to shoot the zombie. It was a
like
pretty great
Zeta?
game to play while you were high, especially if you were good at typing.
Dying.
Weird. Zeta the game.
Yeah, well, so that was the script. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what happened, but what happened, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead. I'm just gonna go back really quick. So the commercial came out in 1997. I'm sorry. And the commercial was shot in 97. In 1998, January, the game Resident Evil 2 was released. And then a lot of rumors started in April 98. Like one was because immediately after he did the commercial, people automatically thought, this is early internet, rumors. People thought Romero was immediately attached to the movie. And then like in April 98, IGN released something that Romero is not directing, but there's someone else that's it's the guy that directed The Vanishing, George. Do you know how to say his last name? Sluizer?
I don't know
the original Vanishing.
The original.
Yeah,
the original,
I think he made the
Not
remake
Kiefer
as well.
Yeah, he did the remake too, yeah.
We got him out.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was supposedly attached in I mean, his name comes up everywhere. In some places says that he wasn't, in some places says he was attached. And so he was somewhat attached, but we can't really find out. And then there was another article that came out like on OO Cities, and then they said this is all fake, of course. It was already filming in Oregon, and constructions of the sets have caused delays, and it's directed by, again, George Sluizer and not Romero. And so far, Bruce Payne will be in it, as Wexler. And of course, that was, and then the budget was 60 million now, so that was probably all fake. And then in July 1998, it was official when Romero signed on to Resident Evil. And what's crazy about this is that I was finally able to go back to the library to look up Resident Evil. I was all excited. And man, there was like no announcement from like Hollywood Reporter or Variety that he was announced to the project. It was like in some like DVD review article I found from July 1998 that he was like at some VSDA expo in Las Vegas. And that's where he kind of announced that he just signed on. And right after, and he was also said at that convention, as soon as he's done Resident Evil, he's going to start his next Living Dead film. And he kind of wanted to do one in the 90s because he did one, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he wanted to do one in the 90s, just about like, the zombies are kind of dead, lying in the gutters, reaching out for people and stuff like that. They kind of wanted to do something about like homelessness. That's how we look at the zombies now. That was like kind of like an idea he had in the 90s. And at the same time too, he was working on a Night of Living Dead TV series. He was trying to get off the ground. And then in August 1998, he finished like his official storyline of it. That was when I went into like copyright. I was looking up stuff, trying to see.
I apologize. And I was going to do an Irish goodbye. I have tickets to Black Box, and I completely blame Graham Skipper for this. Black Phone, sorry. Black Box, I changed the name. And so I'm late now. So
it rules.
do your thing.
Yeah.
I have to leave, but thank you. This was fun, and I look forward to hearing the end of what happens at the end. So,
all right.
Anyway, all right.
We'll let you know if there's any big twists coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It turned out he did make it. We just didn't know.
They're home.
Watch it right now. Bye-bye, Mike.
All right.
Bye, Mike.
Later, man. All right. So, yeah. And then August 1998, there was like a rumored cast of Samantha Mathis, Jason Patrick, and Bruce Campbell. And that, again, was probably all bullshit. And then Romero was saying that, about the script, he's hoping it could be dark and chilling like the game. And what he wants to do with it for US release is have like a R rating release. And because it's going to be an expensive film, because no one's going to take a chance on an unrated film. And so So the other thing that we always forget to talk about is like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead were insanely gory movies for their times. Like right now, it seems like anyone is watching those movies and it's fine compared to what's on TV now. But at the time, those movies were pretty brutal, you know? And so he was going to do a R version, and then he wanted to do an all-out director's cut unrated version. That was what he wanted to do with this. And so
he was one of those guys that was like a target, you know, for the MPAA. So they would have given him an NC-17, just whatever he turned in first, you know?
I don't know if it was like this exact era either, but he had a great but short-lived zombie comic series for Marvel called Toe Tags that was kind of anthology, and there was a lot of great little connective tissue things.
I don't know that. Did you read that, Collins?
I think I did. The name sounds familiar. Was it with Steve Niles?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
I never read it either. Yeah, so, you know, and then we just got to the first draft, October 1998. And then, so 1999, February 1999, Electric Gaming Monthly stated that he's already written a few drafts. April 1999, George Romero gets announced that he's going to team up with the Wachowskis to direct Carnivore. That's their famous unproduced script. And then he was interviewed by EGM, and they asked him about Twilight of the Dead. And at that point, he got really upset. He's like, I don't even know where that title came from. I might have said it jokingly at a press conference, but, you know, he doesn't want to do, that's not going to be his next Dead movie. And funny enough, when I went through his archives, I did find there was a treatment out there of Twilight of the Dead he wrote. So maybe he's now, but, you know, I think the Dead series at that time, the rights were tied up and he couldn't make another of the Dead. And so I think maybe that's why he was shunning the Twilight of the Dead idea off. And then July 1999, George Romero is officially off the project, according to IGN. And again, I couldn't find any of this like on Hollywood Reporter or Daily Variety. It was all through like gaming mags were the ones doing all the articles on this Resident Evil movie. And it said, there was a thing that said, we've seen several of George's manuscripts and they were too zombie-ish. And so
we got the zombie guy to make the Resident Evil movie, and he gave us zombies. What the?
These Ada Wong scenes aren't fleshed out nearly.
Yeah.
Right.
Wong.
And he essentially was turning Resident Evil into Dawn of the Dead. Instead of making it new and original, he wanted to put sunglasses on the zombies and do goofy stuff like that. You know, they were saying, which, and then
it's not in any of this script.
Right? That's what I mean. And they were saying,
you have the sunglasses on Wesker?
Well, that's
I think they had something with Wesker's sunglasses.
I don't know if it's one of the later drafts they start, because the first draft is the movie. It doesn't make sense how they would say he didn't get Resident Evil, because eventually Romero would come out and say they never played the game. They didn't know what they wanted or what they had. You know, he would eventually come out and say. And then the Capcom producer said Romero's script wasn't good, so Romero was fired. That was like what he said in Japan. And and so he was no longer a part of the project. And another guy from Constantine would say, with George, we could have done a great zombie movie for a very limited audience. But, you know, we could have shown it in a regular theater, but we could not have shown it on television. And if it's released on video, it'd be rated X. You know, you can't make it, you know, it's not in a big event movie. And so, you know, again, like they're kind of coloring him like, you know, he did something different than on the script rewrote, because that script is a fun, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I noticed is that, I mean, again, this is the first draft. We don't know what changed along the way, but it seemed just from this that they were already moving away from the survival horror aspect of the game into something more pure actiony. And like I could see them being like, that's what they want out of the movies, and it seemed like he understood the assignment, as they say. Like there's like one little thing, like probably 2/3 of the way through, where they're like, oh, I mean, how much ammo do we have left? I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna be down to a couple bullets, and they have like 42 clips. I'm like, you don't get 42 clips across the entire game, you know, and they've already killed a whole bunch of shit. So I'm like, all right, like that's something I always like been wondering, like, did they ever want to play up the we need to run away from this as opposed to standing there and shooting it 50 times,
Well, which is just funny thinking of then the movie that did get made and has even less of the survival horror than this had, This at least still had scenes in the woods.
Yeah, and it's like, if you don't think he got the game, what the hell did you guys make instead?
Yeah, it's insane how much of the game that the script, when I was, I couldn't believe how many awesome set pieces. I couldn't believe how action packed it was. I wasn't expecting that from.
It is like 75% accurate to the letter of the game, with like the other things not really being. I mean, apart from the whole, the thing we talked about earlier with Chris being like not part of STARS and being this Mohawk Indian guy, doesn't know anything about the unit or whatever. That is the only major diversion, and and Ada Wong, I guess, is different. But I mean, even in the game, her motives are shifting, and you don't really know a lot about her. So it's like, is it really a betrayal to have her to be something different, because she's different in every game anyway because of the nature of her character? So even that's like, it's maybe not to exactly what happened. She wasn't even in the first game. She only appeared in Resident Evil 2. Well, she first appeared in Resident Evil 2. But again, that's not. It was just like him bringing in something from the second game. I wouldn't say it was a radical departure the way that you look at the Anderson movie. You can look at any scene in this script and be like, oh yeah, that's Resident Evil, regardless of what they changed. You can watch Anderson's almost entire movie and not realize like that. If you watch that movie without the title, you probably never realize that was, oh, that's that game that I played on PlayStation 15 years ago.
No, I could see it. Yeah, even like the cards, they have.
Yeah, they do the key card. They didn't do the herbs. That was the one thing I kept waiting for.
Me too.
One thing I thought the Johannes Roberts movie did really well is the keys. That they had the keys with the diamonds and the hearts and the little.
Yeah. There's a little bit of like the puzzle nature, like when when Chris is taking them out after the tyrant's dead. They're going through the mansion to get out to the chopper. Like he tips a statue head or whatever, and it makes the thing go, and then like there's like a clock, and he has to put the clock in the right hands, and that'll open a door. I'm like, all right, those aren't exactly in the game that I remember, but like that's definitely in the vibe. Like,
how much in the games? Because the one thing, just knowing Romero and what he likes to inject in his movies, that I was expecting to see in this, that there's almost none of, but actually is in the Johannes movie, is just kind of the like sort of satire on this, like, the fact that this corporation like owns this town and all their dumb propaganda. Is that stuff from the games though? Or did Johannes
came into the later ones, like Umbrella's
ones?
Umbrella's kind of backdropped in the first game.
So that's maybe why there's none of that.
Shit until the
okay. Yeah, I was expecting him to really play up that they're like propaganda commercials and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, that all came in. That mostly came in. I mean, that their name, and obviously because of Wesker, that they're like up to no good and stuff, but it's more of like a twist near the end, if I'm remembering correctly. It wasn't like a through line.
In the game,
the way the Raccoon City movie kind of turned it into.
Yeah, because in the Raccoon City movie, it's like Umbrella basically owns the town. Is that what it's like in the original games? Or
no? Definitely not in the first. I mean, you don't even see the town in the first, and there might have been a little more of it in 2. I can't remember. 2, I didn't. 2's the one I played the least of the original 6. For whatever reason, I just never got far in that one, and I haven't played the remake version. But there is more town in that one, but I don't remember it being like, oh, an Umbrella owns this bar, and the Umbrella owns this, and
Yeah, the bulk of 2 actually takes place in the Raccoon City police station. Like that map and the unlocking of it in various stages is most of the game.
The Raccoon City movie was kind of combining 1 and 2.
Yep.
The games, and
you get the mansion and the police station, which they make a point in the movie to be like, so strange that our police station was built into an old art museum.
I haven't seen
because the first game was Jill and Chris, and the second game was Leon and Claire, and the movie in the Raccoon City movie had all 4 of them.
What else we got, Steve?
All right, and then in 1999, Kevin Williamson was rumored because he was, Scream and I Know What You Did, but that was probably just a rumor. Jeffrey Wright was also rumored, the guy who did Romper Stomper and Cherry Falls, because he was also attached to Supernova, and then he left that last minute. That's a whole other episode. Very obsessed with that movie. Oh my god!
And Supernova,
right?
We kind of have an episode about that, right, Steve?
A little bit,
William Malone. We're talking more about his movie that
Dead Star.
morphed into
Right.
Supernova. But
Yeah. And
What's
then
the pseudonym on Supernova? Lee? Something
Lee
Lee.
Tom-
Is it Alan?
Lee Thompson?
Oh, it's not an
J.
Alan
Lee
Smithy
Thompson?
movie?
No,
Or-
No, something Lee, I think.
Yeah, because he didn't use Alan Smithy because what's his nuts? Showgirls director? No, Showgirls
Verhoeven.
writer.
Oh, yeah. He had the
Verhoeven.
Alan Smithy movie. Esterhaus.
Oh,
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
his name?
Joe
yeah,
Esterhaus.
Verhoeven.
Joe Esterhaus.
Oh, sorry, Esterhaus. Yes.
He
Yeah.
put out the Alan Smithy movie, and
Yeah, they
because of
stopped
that,
using the
that was like
I
the
think
first movie.
With Eric
I think
Idle.
Hellraiser 4 was the last Alan Smithy movie I saw.
Yep, I think that, yeah, something like that. I did a bunch of research on that. I got to go back and look.
We're on a tangent right now.
Yeah.
We had to drop some bloodline in.
Steve's just got to
Good.
go on a Guyver tangent.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on Hellraiser 4 to go back.
I've heard it. It's
Peter
awesome.
Atkins.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Such a cool guy. All right. And so around this time, Paul Anderson, I think he was off of Soldier or something. He got the Resident Evil game and he was up one night playing it. And then he called his producer, who would go on to produce the Resident Evil movies. He's like, yo, you got to get me the rights to this game. This game's amazing. And then the next day, Bolt, his producer, calls, is like, Constantine owns the rights and Romero is attached. And so Anderson was like, damn it. So what he decided to do, because he loved the game, he couldn't stop playing it. He wrote a script called Undead. And he pretty much said, quote, my idea was to pretty much rip off a Resident Evil. It's like I was going to make a version that would probably get me sued. It had exactly the same game elements, the mansion, the woods, the underground laboratory. But, but he
that's fascinating. But then his Resident Evil movie didn't really happen.
And then when he got Resident Evil, he changed 2 things from that script and made it Resident Evil.
Wait, and Steve, is this before or after he was trying to do Castlevania?
This might be before. I think Castlevania, I believe, is in the early 2000s. I have to look up all those. That's another Castlevania folder I have to get to, but I believe that's in the 2000s. That one. I have too many folders of unproduced movie research.
I would love to see that Castlevania folder, man.
Yeah, it's growing.
Well, that'll be a future episode, so we'll let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then February 3rd, 2000, Jamie Blanks is announced in Ain't It Cool News that he passed on Urban Legend 2. He wasn't happy with the script, but it looks like he's going to direct Resident Evil, and his is going to be set in a not too distant future. Jamie Blanks directed Urban Legend 1. And
Storm Warning? Yeah.
Storm Warning.
Oh, he did Storm Warning?
Yeah, I believe so. I think I'm right.
That one scene in that movie
really good.
Disturbs me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I know the scene.
Jesus. Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, right on. And I think he did Valentine, right?
Valentine,
Yeah.
That's the one.
So I guess Valentine was what he did instead of Resident Evil. I never knew he was up for Resident Evil. That would have been cool.
Man, I just rewatched Valentine recently and its original theatrical trailer, which promoted it as a romantic comedy. Girl on the blanket with the box of chocolates.
Is it good? I haven't seen it.
Valentine is
love
like
it, but I don't know that I can, I mean, your
surprisingly-
mileage will vary probably, but I like it a lot.
If you like the early 80s whoddunit slashers,
that's it. That's the touch.
How much do you love David Boreanaz?
Exactly.
I got you. Yeah, that was during the Nancy Drew era of slashers.
It's totally different than the book, but
book
I have a lot of fun.
The movie
with the
has more changes than Paul Anderson did.
A nice touch, though, that the killer has his nose bleed after every kill, though. For some, I don't know what the fire starter reason for that was.
Which I don't know if I can get my camera.
What are you showing us?
It is the Alone in the Dark poster.
That's
an acknowledged reference to Alone in the Dark.
Oh, nice.
Love it so much.
The bleeder.
The bleeder. Yeah.
The fucking bleeder.
Yeah.
That's
Valentine is I'm glad. As much as I would have liked a Jamie Blanks Resident Evil, if that was the consolation, then I'm fine with the way things worked out.
All right, I gotta check it out then. So his was going to take place in the not too distant future, where all viruses and life-threatening diseases like cancer and AIDS are now curable. And now an evil corporation comes along and
so it's basically Crimes of the Future.
Yeah.
We're immune from all disease. They do the surgery.
And Chris Redfield has a caul around his head and weird glove things, and he just kind of lurches around the city talking to people and next to docks.
It's like a Jedi. Yeah.
So
the Jedi
much.
that talks like Batman. I liked it. I liked it.
I did too.
Yeah. And so his a corporation comes in and creates a drug, creates a disease that's like uncurable, and it's going to infect the world. And the only way to cure it is to cough up money for a vaccine. And then that was his concept, according to Ain't It Cool News. And then September 19th, 2000, Michelle Rodriguez, she hadn't done Fast and Furious yet. It looks like I think she was interviewed.
She was in Girl Fight, I think.
Yeah, just fresh off a Girl Fight. She told the Hollywood Reporter that she heard they're making a Resident Evil movie and she'd love to be in it. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She willed it to happen.
Yeah, bummed it.
And she must have willed herself to be brought back to life later in the franchise.
Yeah, I wish she was in it more, man. I really like her. And it would have been cool if they would have. Anyway, I didn't write the movies. And then October 5th, 2000, Anderson becomes attached to Resident Evil, $40 million budget, Halloween 2001 release originally. And I think, and this is my theory, I think with him, like he also pitched them like this idea of like the T virus congeals the blood, so you won't have as much gore when zombies are being shot at. And the other thing, because it's like, we all love Romero, we all love what he does with elaborate zombie makeup that could take hours, like the Dr. Tongue guy. But for him, it was all about, not doing that, just, simplifying all these zombies so they could just keep moving on and his makeup team won't be going crazy. And I have a feeling that's what they probably liked also. It's like Romero is still old school and wants to do, which is, God bless him. Well,
I think as somebody said that Romero kind of had a reputation, not just with the MPA. I think, certain filmmaker, Terry Gilliam probably had the worst coming out of the 80s of studios just felt like this person did not care about your money. Like they were an artist and you should be happy they're making a movie for you. That was Terry Gilliam for sure. I don't know how bad Romero was at that, but I think W.S. Anderson, if you look at the success of his career, you just know he's somebody that the studio is like, this guy makes his movies on budget and on time, and they usually make money back.
Get the Monster Hunter franchise in his hands.
Well, right away. We'll see how that goes moving forward, because that lost a lot of money.
But he got those rights like immediately, right?
They sure did.
Smart.
Like, again, the Resident Evil movies globally have made so much money. So
yeah, insane. And then so when Resident Evil was first, it was originally under the title Resident Evil : Ground Zero, because I think he did that to kind of keep. Originally, it was meant to be like, "Yo, this is a prequel to the game," type thing. To kind
there's a series of novels too that are somehow still in print that have been around since the late '90s as well. That I think some of that lore from the novels winds in as well.
I wonder.
That's interesting.
Jim, my director of the novelization doc, he has them all. I've never looked through them yet because like some of them are named differently and it confuses me.
Yeah. Some of them are novelizations of the films and some are just completely standalone, like Claire and Chris joints, basically.
Yeah. The Resident Evil 1 movie, the Anderson movie from 2002, has a novelization, but it's under a different title. It's not just called Resident Evil. I forget now. I'm blanking what it called. They gave it a colon subtitle. Most of the sequels, I think 4 might be the only one that doesn't have a novelization. There's like they skipped one of them for whatever reason, but the rest of them all do. And they fill in some of the plot holes. the author takes it upon himself to make a little more sense, especially because at the end of 5 has a huge cliffhanger that is completely ignored in 6. It's kind of fascinating to watch, especially if you said you binged them earlier, and I'm curious how that plays
but they
out,
all bleed. You know, it's like
five,
watching.
They bleed
Wesker
together.
and Alice and everybody. They're like, we're all
Yeah.
gonna band together at the White House, and then at the beginning of 6, everybody's dead, and you're like, wait, what?
Oh, that's
It was
right.
It was same with the clones, because I think they give her clones at the end of one movie, and then there's this awesome opening.
She's got
to the
her
next
army.
movie,
Anderson
just
is
get killed off,
constantly
basically.
ignoring his own setups. Like he set something up at the end of the movie, and he's like, fuck it. He does it with Chris too. Chris Redfield, again, the game's main character, who's the star of like several of the games, is finally introduced in the 4th movie randomly, and then he's just completely he's alive at the end of 4, but then at the beginning of 5, he's never seen again.
He died in between movies.
Sure.
Oh, is that the one when he's on the copter and he's holding Ada Wong's hand? Or was that Leon?
Well, they cast the guy from Prison Break.
Oh, Wentworth Miller.
Yeah, is Chris, and they just happen to find him in a prison in part 4, which I was like, okay.
Wow, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
And I like the movies. All right. Yeah. By the way, David Boreanaz was rumored he was attached at one point. That now that you brought him up,
to be Chris, he'd be a good Chris. We could see him as Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. And so before Resident Evil came out, they already announced the sequel, Resident Evil Nemesis. And then March 12th, 2002, Resident Evil is released, and it comes in second place behind Ice Age with 6 million.
Ice Age.
Yeah.
Another movie with interchangeable colon subtitles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and that also made $1 gajillion globally.
And to continue our zombie talk really quick, what's wild? Yeah, like in 2000 to 2002, there was like maybe 5 to 6 zombie movies coming out. And by the way, April 2002 is when Romero starts discussing his next Dead film will contain a wall around the city. And then 2003, the 28 Days Later comes out, House of the Dead comes out. There was maybe 11 zombie movies that year. And I think zombie movies started coming out more and more because of the Resident Evil games. And then 2004, 21 zombie movies or dead came out. And then
that's Shaun of the Dead. That's
Dawn of the Dead remake.
The Dead remake.
Well, we got in the whole era of like zombie comedies, like Fido and stuff like that.
Resident Evil Apocalypse, Land of the Dead.
Say what we will about Anderson's movie, and I think we can all agree it was not as good as what Romero's probably was going to be, especially if you were a gamer. I mean, I don't think Anderson's movie is bad. I should say it's just not the game.
It's a bad adaptation.
It's a bad adaptation. But certainly for me, that was the first time I'd ever seen zombies on the big screen. You know, I mean, everything else I had seen up to that point, Dawn, Night, The Return of the Living Dead, so all that stuff was always, on TV, on VHS. A lot of that stuff never even opened theatrically near me. Like Return of the Living Dead 3 was a theatrical release, but like you were saying earlier, Josh, it didn't come to my town. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I never had the opportunity to go see a zombie movie until then. And now it's like, well, not recently, but certainly for a long period of the OOs, they're everywhere. I mean, finally we got the freaking World War Z with Brad Pitt. I think that was like the culmination of the whole zombie craze.
Yeah, zombie movie that cost over $100 million.
Yeah.
So.
No, I remember. Yeah, because I remember when 28 Days Later came out, my friend's like, "Dude, this is the best zombie movie since Return of the Living Dead." And it's like, holy shit, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
It's also it beat the other 3.
Yeah,
but I mean, you were on the numbers before, and I was surprised by how high they were. But they definitely never fell out of favor as much in Italy. They were constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those numbers
until the
it's all over.
They're making movies at all.
Those numbers Steve was giving, I'm like, probably almost none of them were something we would consider.
No. I mean,
if there's a
90s,
zombie
it's basically just Cemetery Man, Return of the Living Dead 3, I guess, Dead Alive, which didn't come up.
Like The Dead Hate the Living, maybe some more
direct-to-video
stuff.
Those are all included because there are zombies in it. Yeah, they're all not like, but so they are. I guess
there was nothing in multiplexes for sure.
No, not
unless you want to count like Pet Cemetery 2 as a zombie movie.
that is
counted.
Probably is. That is.
I think they just count. If Reanimator got count, they're just counting anything.
Yeah, if the zombies don't, if you get bitten by a zombie, don't turn into one. It's not a zombie movie.
Yeah.
So that's why I will take 28 Days Later as a zombie movie. I know that's a huge debate, but not Pet Sematary.
Yeah. I got a lot of people yelling at me right now because of these numbers, but yeah, that's according to Wiki, going through all the zombie movies out every year. Oh yeah, and by the way, I was wrong. Land of the Dead came out in 2005. It was kind of announced in 2004, but yeah, 2005, 22 zombie movies, 2006, 25.
I forgot that Land of the Dead came out after the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Yeah. I think Land of the Dead came out this weekend, 2005.
Oh, really?
I do remember I went to see it right before I got married, and tomorrow's my anniversary, so it was right around here.
Holy shit, dude, you're right. Yeah, because it came out June 24th.
Okay. So
June 24th, 2005. Look at you.
Yeah.
And I'll just stop with all the zombie numbers. 2008, I'll just say 31. And then
we did it.
2009, 27, and The Walking Dead premiered in 2010.
I don't even remember it. Was that 20? No,
let's see.
28 weeks later was 2007.
Let's see really quick. 2008. Let's see. According to Wiki, Ninjas vs. Zombies, Outpost, Pontypool, Quarantine, Real Zombies, Resident Evil, Sexy Killer. What the fuck's that? Splinter. Is that a zombie movie? Maybe a lot of these aren't.
Splinter's just kind of a random creature thing rather than a zombie thing. Yeah.
Although that zombie at least like spreads on, you know, but
you're right. There's some contagion element to that.
Yeah. Edge of Darkness, Flick, The Guard Post, I Sell the Dead, Make Out. Nonsense. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's not Dead Girl.
Dead Girl.
Yeah. Dance of the Dead.
Oh, okay. Dance of the Dead, I remember.
There's a movie called Make Out with Violence that's like a super indie one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean. Yeah. All right.
Nothing major.
Wait, do we know really what happened with the Romero version? It's just
with Resident Evil?
Yeah, was it just too expensive? Or?
No, Capcom didn't like the scripts. I don't think they liked working with him. I have a feeling now that you attach, I think what happened was everyone online, this is my theory, everyone online was going crazy that it was their number one choice. You got to get Romero to do this. And when he was on board, they're excited. But maybe his last two movies, as we spoke about in the beginning of the show, kind of bombed. He didn't get, if he made The Mummy for Universal, there could have been a chance to trust him with this budget, but he wasn't able to get The Mummy off the ground. And, and also, like we were saying, his movies were super gory. And if he made a Resident Evil movie, is word of mouth going to get out? Oh, this guy made these crazy zombie movies, gory movies, made it. Could that hurt the word of mouth? Is it turning into a Romero movie versus a Resident Evil movie? They probably had all these voices. That's my theory in their heads. Or maybe they just didn't like working with him. I don't know. All it says is they didn't like the scripts. They didn't like what he was doing.
So it almost seems like not against Romero or anything, but it almost seems kind of lazy for him to do a Resident Evil movie. You know what I mean? Like the same way it felt like when Spielberg did Ready Player One. It was just like, why are you doing this? Like, this should be somebody who grew up with you, like, or Argento making Giallo, which even, Keller, the writer, said was like literally the worst choice to make Giallo because it's supposed to be an homage to Argento. It's like you can't homage yourself, and I feel like that's. I mean, they even have the line I brought up earlier, like this is like Night of the Living Dead. It's like I'd rather Romero is sitting in the crowd appreciating that than directing somebody saying that. You know what I mean? Like it's
just it is ironic that Capcom didn't like his script but it's the one that's faithful to the game. And then the movie that did get made is not, I mean, but who knows, as we've talked about in our Halo episode with Microsoft, it's like sometimes these game companies that don't think like movie companies, you never necessarily know. Yeah. It might even have been that Capcom didn't like that it was so similar to the game. They were hoping that it would be some whole new movie version or something.
They're like, we want a lady waking up with amnesia and to take a shower. Why don't you have any of that?
Yeah,
we'll find somebody who can give us that.
Well, yeah, because then it doesn't hurt the game continuity either. It's a safe bet going with him. He made a successful video game movie. He understands budgets, and he was smart about the gore, like I talked about with how the virus deals with your blood and the way he wanted to handle zombies. And I think and then he had a head start. He wrote a script while he kind of figured it might not work out with Romero. He just came in all guns blazing. He had everything lined up. I mean, you can I mean, I'm going through these old articles from like Ain't It Cool and all this stuff, and I'm blown away at how much they hated him after Soldier. I mean, like everyone couldn't stand him, and then the moment he gets attached, everyone's railing him. And I don't know. I always liked him. I have no problem with him. But I don't know. I think he was really smart at the way he approached it, because but look what happened. You got all these sequels. Could you not get those sequels out of this Romero version?
No, for sure. I mean, he left the characters alive. The main characters. He didn't kill. But he definitively killed Wesker. Mm-hmm. The Anderson movies kind of kept bringing him back, as did the games. But he was definitive. I mean, his head was removed. He was impaled, and then his head got cut off for good measure. They killed that fucker. But I don't see how this would not have been. It would have been very easy to sequelize this. They clearly left it open for a sequel. Mm-hmm. So as long as it was a success, I can't imagine, whether it was with Romero or not, a Resident Evil 2 to this would have been very easy to do. Because again, you have the games. And, as long as you have the games to fall back on, and I think that was something that kind of hurt the Anderson series after a while, as far as creatively. It felt like he was constantly in a position where he had to combine Alice into what seemed like demand to be more of the game, I think Apocalypse was closer to. I think Apocalypse was a good version of what it could be like to see his world combined with the game world. I think, it definitely had a lot of Resident Evil 2 vibe to it. It had a lot more of the characters. It had Nemesis in it, so it was like, but it was still very Alice focused. And I feel like he really kind of nailed, even though he didn't direct that one himself, on the narrative level, he kind of nailed what he was bringing to the table, which was basically a completely different thing, and, marrying that to the game. Mm-hmm. But it's like you didn't have to do that with Romero's. There was nothing to marry. Mm-hmm. He gave you. He didn't invent. The only character he invented was the one he stole from Aliens, the Rosie Rodriguez. At least as far as major character, Rake, I guess, was not a game character either. Our friend
good old Rake, the farmer.
Rake the farmer, yeah.
Zombie farmer.
The closest he came to inventing a major character was Chris, because he changed his origin.
Speaking of Chris, I should ask, Chris, do you need to get going? You do.
I'm so sorry. I'm putting out a small fire on my phone right now. Our secret screening is beginning. So
we are in the middle of a festival that you're right.
But I don't want to be rude because this is
no. We can wrap it up. I think we got through everything. Brian, where can people find you on social media?
I am at Brian W. Collins on Twitter and Instagram. And occasionally very, very occasionally I Twitch the Friday the 13th game. Jay Grayland 23. Nice. Maybe I'll do a Resident Evil. Maybe I'll load up the remake of 2, because I haven't played it yet. And I'll Twitch some of that.
And Mike Mendez, who is not here anymore.
Mike can be found at the Black Phone right now. You should go talk to him.
You can find him on Twitter. He's on Twitter at Madman Mendez. Chris Dortch, I know you are not on Twitter.
I am not, and
neither am I.
You're all smart than me and Steve.
But Chattanooga is on.
We are, it's just Chat Film Fest at pretty much every one of those places.
Yeah, but by the way, I had such a blast at your frightening ass film festival. I always tell people about.
Oh man, I hugely appreciate it, and that was like one of the very first chances I got to see you do this in some form. So it's an honor to be on the show for sure.
Oh no, dude, it was a
thank you for having us,
man. Seriously.
Wait, if it's already started, what's the secret screening? You can tell us if it already started.
I'll tell you, it said something in the dirt.
Oh yeah,
nice,
oh, cool.
Although we rickrolled people before it, so just a little bit.
And obviously we're live streaming this, but we will be re-airing it as proper episodes of our podcast, probably like a month or so from now. And I guess for those just listening to it as a podcast now, with the festival having been several weeks in the past, is there anything you would want to tee up for the future? Or I don't know if Chattanooga does anything year round.
We will have some year round stuff happening. So if people want to go to chatfilmfest.org, we'll keep them informed. hope to do a whole bunch of different little film series between now and 2023, which should be a return to the ground in kind of a hybrid form for us. Some stuff on the ground, and because the virtual has gone over so well, we don't want to cut that off and lose so many new friends and fans. So yeah.
Great. Steve, do you have any parting thoughts?
Oh, just on no, just please follow our social media for the shark documentary.
Yeah, Steve and
we'll make sure we post that in the Discord too and get some folks on there.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Steve is directing Sharksploitation. I guess maybe we still shouldn't announce yet, but we have secured our distribution for that. Oh, yes. Brian's holding up some Jaws. Is that a puzzle?
That's the Jaws puzzle box.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but please follow us social. It means a lot. We're trying to grow it. Thank you.
All right, but thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, man.
True honor.
This
Great
awesome.
to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Bye.
All right.